My parents sued me for my house. The judge shut them down instantly. My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old. And last year my parents sued me for my house. They thought they would win. They thought I was still the scared little girl who begged for their approval. They were wrong. Before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, the moment the judge shut them down in less than 3 minutes, I need you to understand how we got there. Because this wasn't just about a house. This was about control, betrayal, and the quiet kind of abuse no one talks about. But first, if you've ever had family turn against you, drop a comment with your country or city. I want to know I'm not alone in this. And if this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe. It really helps me share my story. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My parents, Mark and Linda, were what everyone called strict but loving. That's what people said when they saw us in public. My mom always had her hand on my shoulder. My dad always bragged about my grades. But behind closed doors, love felt more like ownership. I was their only child. No siblings to share the pressure. No one to take some of the blame. From as early as I can remember, they planned my life like it was a project. "You're going to be a lawyer," my dad would say when I was 8, like it was already signed and sealed. "You'll buy us a house one day," my mom added, laughing, but I could tell she wasn't joking. When I was 10, I drew a picture of a tiny house by a lake. I said I wanted to live somewhere quiet when I grew up. My mom folded the paper and put it in her purse. "That's cute," she said, "but you'll live near us. Family sticks together." I didn't understand then how serious she was. My teenage years were a constant negotiation. If I wanted to go to a friend's house, I had to text every hour. If I got a B instead of an A, my dad would sit me down and lecture me about how I was wasting their sacrifices. "We gave up everything for you," he'd say. "You owe us," my mom would whisper. That word, "owe," followed me everywhere. I owed them good grades. I owed them obedience. I owed them my future. And eventually, I would owe them a house. I left for college on a partial scholarship. My parents were proud, but also furious I chose a school 3 hours away instead of staying in town. "You're abandoning us." My mom cried the night before I left. "You think you're better than us now," my dad added, even though he'd been the one pushing me to succeed. I spent my first semester feeling guilty every time I didn't call. They'd text, "Did you forget who paid for your childhood? We sacrificed everything." So I called. Every day. In college, I studied nursing instead of law. I never told them I switched majors until junior year. When I finally did, my dad went silent for a full minute on the phone. "Nursing?" he repeated. "So you're choosing mediocrity." I cried for hours after that call, but for the first time, I didn't change my decision. After graduation, I got a job in a hospital in another state. I rented a small apartment. My parents visited once and criticized everything. "The kitchen is too small. You'll never raise a family here. You should move back home." They said home, like it was a command. Then I met Daniel. He was a resident doctor, quiet, kind, and the first person who ever asked me what I wanted without attaching guilt. When I told my parents about him, they demanded to meet him immediately. My mom smiled too hard. My dad grilled him about money, family background, and long-term plans. When Daniel said he wanted to live in the city, my mom laughed. "Claire will be near us," she said, as if he wasn't in the room. We got married 2 years later. My parents came, of course. My mom cried through the ceremony. People thought they were tears of joy, but I heard her whisper, "She's slipping away." 5 years ago, Daniel and I bought our house. It wasn't huge, but it was beautiful, a 2-story place with a small backyard and a big kitchen. I cried when we signed the papers. It was the first thing in my life that felt truly mine. My parents hated it. "It's too far from us," my mom said on FaceTime. "You wasted money." My dad added, "You could have bought something near us for cheaper." But I loved that it was far. It meant boundaries. 2 years later, my dad lost his job. My parents had no savings. They called me in a panic. "We might lose the house," my mom cried. "You're our only child," my dad said. "You have to help us." I started sending money every month. Rent, groceries, utilities. They called it temporary. It wasn't. Last year, everything exploded. My parents told me they were selling their house and moving closer to me. I was shocked, but thought maybe it was for the best. Then my mom casually said, "We'll stay with you until we find something." I froze. "Stay with us?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "It's your house, but we're family. You owe us." That word again. They arrived with 8 suitcases. They criticized my furniture. They rearranged my kitchen. My dad started calling the guest room his room. One night, I overheard my mom on the phone with a realtor. "Yes, we're moving into our daughter's house," she said. "It's basically ours. We paid for her life." I felt sick. 3 months later, I came home from work and found a letter on the table. Not a card. Not a note. Legal papers. My parents were suing me for my house. My parents sued me for my house. The judge shut them down instantly. I stared at the papers for a long time. At first, I thought it was a joke, some twisted attempt to scare me into obedience. But then I saw the law firm name, the official stamp, and my name typed in bold letters. Plaintiffs, Mark and Linda Harris. Defendant, Claire Harris. Subject, claim of ownership and financial compensation for residential property. My hand started shaking so badly I dropped the folder. When my parents came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch with the papers spread out in front of me like a crime scene. "You're suing me?" I asked quietly. My mom sighed like I was the unreasonable one. "Don't be dramatic, honey." My dad crossed his arms. "You owe us. We're just making it official." I felt like the floor disappeared under me. Official? This is my house. Daniel and I bought it. My mom smiled, the same tight smile she used when she wanted control. "We raised you. We paid for your education, your food, your clothes. Without us, you wouldn't have this house." My dad nodded. "Legally, you owe us restitution." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "That's not how the law works." He tilted his head. "We'll see." That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel was on night shift, so I sat alone in the kitchen, rereading every page. They were claiming that they had financially supported me for decades, that I had verbally promised to provide housing and lifelong care, and that the house was therefore partially theirs. There was even a paragraph claiming emotional damages. I felt betrayed in a way I didn't have words for. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was war. When Daniel came home at 6 in the morning, I handed him the papers without saying a word. He read silently. His jaw tightened. "They actually filed this?" he asked. "Yes." He looked up at me. "Claire, this is insane. They don't have a case." I wanted to believe him, but my parents had always managed to twist reality. The next morning, my mom acted like nothing happened. She made coffee, watered the plants, and asked if I wanted pancakes. "You can't sue me and then make breakfast like this is normal," I said. She sighed again. "We're just protecting ourselves. You're our retirement plan." I stared at her. "I'm your daughter." She patted my hand. "Exactly." They moved from the guest room to the master bedroom when Daniel and I were out one day. When I confronted them, my dad said, "You two can use the smaller room. We're older. We need more space." I felt like a guest in my own house. A week later, I got a letter from their lawyer. They were asking the court to force me to sell the house and give them half the proceeds. I broke down in the shower that night, sobbing so hard I thought I'd throw up. I called my Aunt Ruth, my mom's older sister, the only relative who had ever seen through them. "They're suing me for my house," I whispered. There was a long pause. "I'm not surprised," she said quietly. Aunt Ruth told me stories I'd never heard. How my parents borrowed money from everyone and never paid it back. How they tried to pressure my grandparents to sign over their home. How they believed children were investments. They did the same thing to me, she said. They tried to guilt me into co-signing their mortgage. When I refused, they didn't talk to me for 10 years. I felt a strange mix of relief and horror. I wasn't crazy. The first court date was scheduled for 3 months later. My parents started acting like they already owned the place. My mom told neighbors, "We might be selling this house soon. It's partly ours." My dad started interviewing realtors. I felt invisible. One night, I finally snapped. "You can't just take my house," I said at dinner. My dad slammed his fork down. "We gave you life. That house exists because of us." My mom added softly, "Do you know how much it cost to raise you?" I looked at them. I didn't ask to be born. Silence filled the room. My mom's eyes narrowed. "That's the most selfish thing you've ever said." Daniel suggested we move out temporarily, but I refused. "This is my house," I said. "I'm not letting them push me out again." He squeezed my hand. Then we fight. We hired a lawyer. Her name was Karen, a calm woman in her 40s who had clearly seen every type of family disaster imaginable. After reading the case, she leaned back in her chair. "This is emotional blackmail disguised as a lawsuit," she said. "They don't have a legal claim." "Then why do I feel so scared?" I asked. She smiled gently. "Because they're your parents. The law is simple. Emotions aren't." My parents found out I hired a lawyer and accused me of betrayal. "You're choosing strangers over us," my mom cried. "They're poisoning you," my dad said. I felt like I was 12 again, begging for permission to exist. As the court date got closer, they escalated. They told relatives I was abusing them. They posted vague Facebook posts about ungrateful children. They told neighbors I was planning to throw them out on the street. My phone started filling with messages from distant cousins I barely knew. "How could you do this to your parents? They sacrificed everything for you." I stopped responding. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. Daniel held my hand and whispered, "No matter what happens, this ends tomorrow." I stared at the ceiling, thinking about that word, ends. I didn't know if I wanted this to end or if I wanted answers. The courthouse was cold and gray. My parents sat across the hallway from us, whispering to their lawyer. My mom wore a black dress, like she was attending a funeral. My dad avoided my eyes. When the clerk called our case, my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. We walked into the courtroom. And that's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. My dad had brought a binder thicker than a textbook. He smiled at me like he already won. My parents sued me for my house. The judge shut them down instantly. The courtroom felt smaller than I imagined. The ceiling was low, the benches were worn, and the judge's chair looked like something out of a TV show I used to watch as a kid. But nothing about this felt like TV. This was my life. My parents sat just a few feet away, but it felt like they were on the other side of the world. My mom held a tissue in her hand, already prepared to cry. My dad kept flipping through his binder like he was about to give a college lecture. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm here," he whispered. I nodded, but my mouth felt dry. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and tired eyes, entered and everyone stood. "Be seated," she said calmly. Her voice wasn't harsh, but it carried authority. My parents' lawyer stood up first. He was tall, confident, and had the kind of smile that looked rehearsed in a mirror. "Your Honor, this case is about fairness and responsibility," he began. "My clients devoted their lives to raising their daughter. They sacrificed financially, emotionally, and physically. They were promised lifelong care and housing, which the defendant has now denied them." My stomach twisted. Promised? I never promised that. Then my mom took the stand. She looked smaller than usual, shoulders hunched, voice trembling. If I didn't know her, I might have believed her. "I love my daughter," she said, dabbing her eyes. "I gave up my career to raise her. We paid for everything. We never asked for much, just that she wouldn't forget us." The lawyer asked, "Did Claire promise you that she would take care of you?" My mom nodded. "She said we could live with her, that the house would be ours too. She said family comes first." I stared at her in disbelief. My dad testified next. He sounded calm, logical, almost convincing. "We invested in her future," he said. "She wouldn't be where she is without us. We believe we deserve security in our old age." The lawyer held up a printed email. "Is this your daughter's message?" He read aloud, "You can stay with us for a while until you find something." My dad looked at the judge. To us, that was a promise. I wanted to scream. Then it was our turn. Karen stood up and spoke calmly, methodically. "Your Honor, raising a child does not create a legal debt," she said. "There is no contract, written or verbal, granting ownership of this property. The plaintiffs never contributed financially to the purchase of the home." She turned to my parents. "Did you pay the down payment?" My dad hesitated. "No. Did you contribute to the mortgage?" "No." "Do you have any documentation showing ownership?" "No." The courtroom was silent. Then Karen called Aunt Ruth as a witness. My mom stiffened when she walked in. Ruth looked older than I remembered, but her voice was steady. "I've known Mark and Linda my entire life," she said. "They've always believed children owe parents financially. They tried to pressure our parents into signing over their home. They tried to get me to co-sign their loans." My mom whispered, "That's not relevant." The judge raised an eyebrow. "It is if it shows a pattern." Karen handed Ruth a folder. "Do you recognize these messages?" Ruth nodded. "They're from Linda. She said Claire was their retirement plan." My mom's face turned pale. Then something happened I didn't expect. My dad stood up without being called. "Your Honor," he said, voice cracking. "We're not monsters. We're scared. We're old. We thought this was how families work." For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. Then Daniel stood up. He hadn't spoken all day. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" he asked. The judge nodded. "You may." He walked forward, his voice calm but firm. "I'm also an attorney," he said. My parents' lawyer looked stunned. My mom's mouth dropped open. "You're a lawyer?" she whispered. Daniel continued. "We never disclosed this because we didn't want to escalate family tensions. But I want to clarify something. There was never any promise of ownership. There was an invitation to stay temporarily." He turned to my parents. "You recorded our conversations without consent and selectively edited them. That's illegal in this state." The courtroom gasped. My dad's face drained of color. The judge leaned forward. "Is this true?" My parents' lawyer whispered urgently to them. My mom started crying for real this time. "We just wanted security," she sobbed. The judge sighed. She looked at me for a long moment. "Miss Harris," she said gently, "I'm going to rule on this now." My heart stopped.